The storm arrived before the rain ever touched the ground. It began inside the heart of a young man named Elias, long before the world outside knew anything about his struggle. On a cold morning, with clouds hanging low like heavy thoughts, Elias walked down a quiet road carrying a single backpack. Not because he was traveling, but because he had nowhere else left to go. His dreams had fallen apart. His plans had been destroyed, and life had pushed him to the edge, where fear meets desperation. Yet even in that moment, when his steps were slow and his eyes were tired, something unbroken still lived inside him. Something small, trembling, but alive. Courage. It had not shown itself fully yet, but it was waiting inside the storm. People in his town said Elias was gentle, shy, and too soft for a hard world. They were wrong. What they didn't see was the fire inside him, a fire built quietly through years of struggle. They didn't see the nights he worked while others slept, or the days he studied when others rested, or the dreams he guarded even when life tried to steal them. And on that cold morning, as he stepped away from everything familiar, people saw only a young man walking alone. But this moment, this painful, uncertain moment, was the beginning of his strength. It was the first chapter in the story of how courage grows in the middle of hard times. Elias grew up in a small village where houses leaned close to each other, almost as if they were sharing secrets with the wind. His home was simple, built with cracked walls and old bricks, but it was filled with warmth. His father worked in a metal workshop, shaping heavy iron into useful things. His mother worked as a cleaner in the school, returning home each evening with tired hands, but a loving smile. They didn't have much, but what they had, they shared with kindness. Since childhood, Elias dreamed of becoming an architect. While other children played football, he sat with pencils and paper, sketching buildings he imagined. Tall, graceful structures that seemed to touch the sky. He didn't know why he loved buildings so much. Perhaps it was because buildings stood tall, even in storms. Perhaps he wanted to be like that. Life continued quietly until one year changed everything. His father fell ill. At first, the family believed it was just exhaustion. But the sickness deepened, growing heavier each week. The hospital visits became more frequent, and the bills grew larger than anything the family had ever faced. Elias worked nights at a bakery, kneading dough when the world slept, trying to save whatever money he could. His mother worked longer hours. Together they fought the illness with hope, effort, and every coin they could find. But sometimes, even the strongest love cannot stop the hardest truth. One afternoon, the doctor stepped outside the hospital room with eyes full of sadness. Elias understood before a word was spoken. His father was gone. The world became quieter, colder, and heavier than the winter outside. After the funeral, silence filled the house. His mother walked softly, as if afraid to disturb the memories. Elias wanted to study architecture, but the savings meant for his education were gone, all used for hospital care. He felt torn between his dream and the responsibility suddenly placed upon him. He was the man of the house now, and he carried the weight like a mountain across his shoulders. Months passed. Grief doesn't leave easily. It sits beside you, breathing slowly, waiting for you to learn how to live with it. Elias did his best. He worked more hours at the bakery. He helped his mother. He kept drawing buildings at night, but his hands trembled as if the lines on the paper were too heavy to lift. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. His mother sat beside him with an envelope. Inside was a letter, an acceptance letter from a small architecture program in the city. It turned out he had applied months earlier and forgotten about it. His mother looked at him with eyes filled with love and said, "Your father wanted you to build your future. Don't let the world stop you." But going to the city meant leaving his mother alone. They could barely afford rent. The fear of failing, of losing everything, covered him like a shadow. Still, dreams don't disappear just because life becomes hard. Sometimes, hard times reveal whether the dream was real. One morning, before sunrise, Elias made his decision. He packed his backpack. He hugged his mother tightly, feeling her tears on his shoulder, and with a heart full of fear and hope mixed together, he left home. The city was loud, unforgiving, and full of people who moved quickly, as if they were running toward or away from something invisible. Elias felt lost at first. The classrooms were large. The students were confident. Many of them came from wealthy families wearing expensive clothes and speaking loudly about their plans and travels. Elias sat quietly, hoping no one would notice how old his shoes were or how nervous his voice sounded. But he worked hard, harder than he ever had before. He stayed late in the library, studying architecture textbooks with pages heavier than bricks. He drew until midnight. He practiced designing roofs, doors, windows, bridges, anything he could imagine. And slowly, quietly, he began to grow stronger. There were still difficult days. Days when he missed home so deeply that his chest hurt. Days when city life felt too fast, too cold, too unfriendly. Days when he wondered if he should quit and return to his mother. But courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage whispers, "Try again tomorrow." One afternoon, the architecture professor announced a major contest. Each student had to design a small community center for a poor neighborhood in the city. The winning design would be built for real, with the student's name attached. Many students smiled confidently. But Elias felt his heart race. A real building? His building? He had dreamed of this since childhood. He worked day and night. He visited the neighborhood, spoke with families, watched how children played, how elders rested, how neighbors shared space. His design was not just about walls. It was about feeling, about belonging, about giving people a place that felt warm and safe. When he submitted his design, his hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from hope. 2 weeks later, the professor stood at the front of the class holding the winning project. He looked around the room and said, "This design shows understanding, heart, and real purpose. The winner is Elias." For a moment, Elias couldn't breathe. His classmates turned toward him, some in surprise, some in respect, some in disbelief, but none of that mattered. He had done it. He called his mother that evening. She cried with joy, saying, "Your father would be so proud." And for the first time in a long time, Elias looked at the city around him and felt like he belonged. Months later, he stood in front of the construction site, his building rising from the ground, brick by brick. Workers greeted him with smiles. Children watched with excitement. Mothers whispered thanks. He realized something powerful. Courage doesn't grow when life is easy. Courage grows when life is hard, uncertain, and painful. And as he watched the structure take shape, he understood the storm he had survived. It didn't destroy him, it shaped him. It carved strength into his character. It taught him to rise, to continue, to fight, and to believe that inside every human heart, there is a quiet fire waiting for the moment when life becomes difficult enough to reveal it.